leaders build stronger careers, stronger teams, and stronger organizations. I'm your host, Dawn Hendricks, President and CEO of FM Talent Source. And today's topic is one I believe will resonate with leaders at every level, but especially those in the middle. We're talking about how middle managers carry pressure from both sides. Middle managers sit in one of the most influential and often most misunderstood roles in an organization. They're expected to translate strategy into execution, drive results through others, navigate change, and support their teams, all while responding to the expectations of senior leaders. And here's what I've noticed. Many middle managers aren't burning out because they're lacking in capability. In fact, they're some of the most talented, committed, and dependable leaders in the organization. What I'm seeing is that they're burning out because they've developed an unhealthy relationship with responsibility. Some begin to believe that leadership means solving every problem and carrying every burden and protecting everyone from discomfort and being available for everything. But what if healthy leadership isn't about carrying more, but is about understanding the difference between supporting and rescuing? Or accountability versus self sacrifice? What if the goal isn't to become the hero of the story, but to develop other leaders who can share the responsibility? So, to help us unpack this today, I am joined by someone who has a tremendous impact on my own personal leadership journey. My executive coach, Ola Sage. And Ola works with leaders across many industries to help them navigate complexity, strengthen their leadership effectiveness, and build sustainable success. Ola, welcome. And I am so excited to have you here and joining me with what I think will be a really insightful topic.
Thank you, Dawn. I really appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to just talk as leader to leader. We have a mutual friend who says iron sharpens iron. And so I think this is just an extension of that, that what we talk about today hopefully will help, even if it's just one person, sharpen their iron a little bit better. Yeah.
Indeed, indeed. Well, before we jump into the real meat and potatoes of this, I'd like to get a real good baseline or just a foundation of how we're defining good leadership. So, from your perspective or what you've seen, how do you define good leadership?
I like to keep things simple. So my kind of layman's definition of leader is there's only one criteria to be a leader, and that is you need to have at least one follower. Somebody who's willing to say, I'm going to go where you're going, or I'm going to follow, or I'm going to execute on your vision because I believe in you. It's really that simple. I think in the business world, sometimes we pump it up to you got to have these degrees, you've got to have this much experience, you have to have had these different kinds of experiences, you got to know these people. I mean, it's a whole lot of things that can get caught up in that being a good leader. But at the end of the day, it's who's following you, who's following your vision. Yes, these other things can be helpful. Getting education in the area that you want to lead in can be helpful. Getting experience in an area that you're leading in, absolutely helpful. And in some cases necessary. Like you don't want a surgeon working on you who slept at a holiday, the TV commercial, right? So these things are necessary, but you just need to know that you have something that others are willing to buy into.
Yep. Okay. All right. I want to get one other baseline because we're going to be talking about burning out. And I want to understand from your perspective, what does burning out look like or mean versus how, I think there could be many different definitions of that. And so I'd like to at least establish a baseline of what we're talking about that is over the top, and then what could be considered normal work.
Yeah, so I would start with, how do I even define burnout to know what it looks like?
Right.
And professionally, what I've observed, even in my own companies, because in addition to being visited, you know that I run companies and I currently run one now. I think burnout occurs when either my own, or in this case, we're talking about middle managers, where their responsibility, whether it's real or perceived, exceeds their actual authority, right? So you're taking on more than either you have the authority to, or you you actually, you don't have the authority, but you might feel that you do, right? And so when you continue to take on these projects because you want to do well and you want to support the vision, you want to execute, I think that's when burnout occurs. What does it look like? I think it looks like very different things for different people. For some people, it shows up in their health. They might not be sleeping well. They may feel lethargic, don't have energy. For others, it shows up in their personality. They might be short tempered, easily irritated, impatient. For some, it results in detachment. They become insular, and they don't want to be around people. So I think it looks very different. Sometimes it shows up in the quality of the work, and you start seeing an A player who'd been producing really well. All of a sudden, their work product is not at the level that even they expect of themselves. So I think part of being a good leader, back to your first question, is being able to figure out, what are these symptoms reflecting.
Okay. All right. I think we've established kind of a basis for, or a context for how we're going to engage. And so what I thought would be most helpful so that people can actually see themselves in this and actually take something from it is to come up with a couple of scenarios that are real life situations in the workplace, and then we can kind of talk through or unpack how people should deal with these situations. So my first situation is one where the boss, whomever the senior leader is adding on more and more priorities of a team that's already at max capacity. And so the question, and deadlines are slipping and everybody is kind of feeling the pressure of what the expectations have been and then now what they're being added on. And so I'm wondering, for the middle manager who is the one that is responsible for executing on this, and they're feeling the pressure of, I can't even keep up with what I was already asked to do, and now you're adding more on. What's some of the internal dialogue or things that they, as that middle manager, should start thinking when those situations occur? When they're thinking of speaking up to their manager, what's some of the internal questions and dialogue that they might be considering before speaking up?
Yeah, I two words are coming to mind as I was listening to the scenario. One is the mindset, and then the second is the communication. So in terms of the mindset, I have a phrase in my companies: start with the positive. Part of why this responsibility is being given to you is because you're perceived as somebody who will deliver, and will deliver a high quality. So starting with that this is almost it's a compliment, even though it doesn't feel good. And the fact that there is an opportunity in this. Now, that's the mindset piece. In the communication, I think it's about clarity. So I think it's frustrating for a lot of CEOs when people come in and say, "It's too much," because the executive is thinking, "Well, I know that, and we still have some things. Oh, we got to get this done, right?" So you're not sharing any new news. So coming in with an attitude that, I appreciate the confidence that you have in me and our team to deliver on this, and that we've been able to do this and we're committed to, helping the organization succeed. What would be helpful, just those words, what would be helpful, and understanding this request is to help me understand the why behind it and what are the expected outcomes of this, and how where does this fit in the priority of all the other things that we're doing.
Yep. That's great because, my number one question is how are we gonna have this conversation without coming off combative? But I think what you've just laid out is that, letting folks know we already have a full plate. So, perhaps it requires a reshuffling of
Mhm,
priorities.
mhm.
Can you help me
Exactly.
prioritize based on the things that you care most about, realizing we have just this much, kind of bandwidth.
Right.
How do we, kind of, navigate this so that we can accomplish the things uh, that you care most about?
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with even coming in with a proposal
Yeah.
to ask exactly what you just said, Dawn, and saying, and here's some ideas, or
Mhm.
here's some options for you to consider. Here's some things that we can take from start to finish. Here's some things that we might be able to hand off to another team. Here's some things that maybe we just need to shelf for now and do like, so I think executives appreciate when you come in with a challenge to also have some ideas that you've at least considered, as opposed to just, as they say,
Yes,
throwing the
I
monkey
can't
out
do
of
it. I can't
yeah,
do it. It's too
can't
much.
do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that is perfect. We kinda use that as a mindset in our mindset, your word, in our org
Mhm.
where, don't bring a problem without a solution. And you're right, even as I think about, dealing with my team, I love it when they've already thought things through. And then I can just pick through "Oh, okay, yeah, I can this one makes sense. Oh, I hear," you can hear the situation differently when it's not a hard no. And now I've got to try to convince this person to try to get these things done, but we have a path forward. So it may change the timeline,
Mhm.
but we actually have a way to accomplish the objectives that have been given. So
Yeah. Can I share a story though about that? I
sure.
was speaking to a group of middlemen. Actually, they were executives. And I was sharing this concept about come in with a solution or some ideas. And they challenged me and they said, well, we agree on this. However, there are times where they really don't have the solution. And so are you in a way sending a signal that only come to me if you've got the answer, in which case, why are you coming to me? And I thought that was an interesting, so I still think to the point that we've been talking about, coming with a demonstration that you've at least thought
Got
about.
through it. Yeah. You
Yeah.
don't have to have the
Really
answer.
exactly.
I mean, the thing it doesn't have to be that this is what we're gonna do,
Exactly.
but just a hard no with
Yes.
no other, kind of, ideas or suggestions, I think it becomes a little more of a difficult pill to
Yeah.
swallow.
I think your word was better than, most. You said you don't have to have the answer. You don't have to have the end all solution, but you do need to come in with some options, some ideas. Yeah.
Yes,
So I
yes.
like that.
Yeah. No, that's great. Alright, we're gonna go to another
Okay.
another scenario. Alright, so this is the one that I think will resonate with a lot of people. Um, this is the manager that is the fixer. They feel like, every problem they've gotta kinda dip their finger in and try to solve it, right? And they want everything to kind of move through them. Every solution needs to be discussed with them. And so my question is, and so they want all of that, and then they complain like, "Oh my gosh, I'm overtasked, I'm overwhelmed, I'm, all these things." And so let's talk about why we see managers getting lulled into this hero complex, feeling like they need to be the hero and kind of have every solution for every situation that is running under their department or leadership.
Oh, it's a common one, and it's a big one. They're definitely, in my opinion, at that point, not leading, they're just doing, right? If you have to be in the middle of everything, um, you become the bottleneck. And the cause of it, I think, um, I don't know that there's just one cause. Sometimes it's just bad habits that have never been broken, and no one's cared enough to say to them, "This isn't working for you," because they've always succeeded. It's always been, they get through it, and so it just keeps going. Sometimes it's deeper than that. It can be about a question about worthiness. I feel like I have to keep doing all these things to please all these people because maybe I don't feel I'm as worthy. My performance maybe will make up for that, right? And so that sometimes it's really, really deep. It has nothing to do with the work, and has to do more with a person's life experiences, or where they've been or what they've gone through. So again, getting to the bottom of it, I think, requires a leader who is willing to invest in the person,
Yeah.
to understand that person. I think when you start just focusing on behaviors, you can miss a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I um I think I think we sometimes as leaders do people a disservice because the people that get all of the kudos are those that are the make it happen people. And so I think that when I think about a person that is moving from level to level, so I'm not going to deal with some of the worthiness
Mhm,
things because I think that is at a deeper level
mhm,
that the person has to actually unpack that for
mhm,
themselves.
mhm,
But when we get into these norms of what gets recognition inside an organization. It's that person that is making it happen. Oh, I did this, I did that. And so I think people feel like and I guess it is kind of worthiness, but their identity becomes synonymous with I'm the go to person, I'm the make it happen person. If you need something done, come to me because
mhm,
I will make it happen. And so I think a lot of times people get into that rhythm
mhm, mhm.
of how they want to be viewed or how they view themselves until it gets at a level that is unsustainable.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I also think it suggests, maybe it doesn't mean, it suggests that they may be struggling with establishing boundaries, right? If you're constantly taking on more, when do you say no more? And so it goes back to all of this. It's like a circle, right? It goes back to then burnout, and then So when you see a manager who is always in the middle, always, and to your point, sometimes the praise and the recognition feeds it. It could also just be that they need some help establishing boundaries, and maybe they need to understand or know how to delegate. That's another thing. Maybe they don't know how to delegate, don't know how to delegate effectively. So it could be a training thing, it could be a mentoring, coaching opportunity. Yeah. So I think the behavior, what you were saying about what we see at the end, which is this person constantly doing, doing, doing.
Yeah.
There's so many pieces that could be fitting into that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the other thing that I think about actually, two things, but I'll deal with this because I don't know that we touched on this yet, is what negative effect it has on the team
Mm,
when you step in to everything. Um, and I'd like you to talk a little bit about that, but how it can actually uh, cause atrophy in the team's ability to think critically, or to be able to solution things. I mean, folks then just get lazy in their own thinking, because they're like, you know what, manager X will just do it. I'll just give it to this person and see what they think, and then I'll just do whatever they say.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's decision making, leadership. These are all muscles that
Yeah.
if you don't use, they atrophy, right? And so if you're a middle manager, you're the one always making the decisions. Why do your people need to make decisions if you're the one always doing that?
Yeah.
You know, which is why one of the things I often recommend is sometimes don't be in the meetings, because that will force you will see the natural leaders rise up, and or you won't, but it gives there's something about just even being in the room that causes people to defer. So even if you're not saying anything, but you're in the room and you're perceived as the authority, uh, sometimes people will just not show up in the way that they would if you're not there. So it's a small tactic, but it can be effective in helping to get your team to step up in terms of problem solving themselves.
Yeah. What are some other things? So, not showing up to the meetings, and silencing the team.
Mhm.
But what about for the manager? Are there some indicators that they might recognize inside themselves that they're doing too much, that they're overstepping, that they're jumping in, that they're becoming hero for everything? Are there some things that they might that might help them see, "Oh, you know what? I think I'm doing too much. I need to kind
Mhm.
of, defer to the team, or let the team struggle a little bit so that they can start to build some of these muscles."
Mhm.
Are there any things that you might think of that could be useful for someone who's just starting to recognize that they may fall into this category?
Yeah, one is just I call it volume, volume and velocity, right? How many times are people coming to you to solve a problem? And so just even tracking that, even for a period of time, it can be as short as a couple days, it can be a week, it can be a month, but tracking that, because one of the things that you can get caught up in real quickly is constantly solving everybody's problems. And they keep coming back to you because you've solved it once. And so keep drawing from that well. And it never runs dry. So why stop? And the types of issues can also be an indicator. So if people are coming to you for simple things that they could solve themselves, it could be an indicator that you're just too much in the weeds. So maybe a response is, uh, what would you do if you were advising, your friend? Don't even take it out of work. Like a close friend of yours has it. What would you advise them to do? Because sometimes people feel it's easier to advise others
Yeah.
than to advise themselves. And so when you ask them what would they tell somebody else, it's their own answer to themselves.
Yeah. When you were, just talking, it made me also think, that the team member may feel that the manager doesn't trust them. They don't trust their decision making. They don't trust that they have the capability of doing the things if they're always stepping in. You
That
know what I mean? So that's another
yeah,
adverse.
yeah. So one thing that the person, the team member could do is really have that conversation with the manager. Is
Yeah,
that, and maybe identify something that they can be responsible for, and just say, I'd like to try this out and have the opportunity to lead the team in this particular area to
yeah,
just test it. Yeah. The one thing I wanted to add to this whole section about what can a you know, I'm a big fan of data and not labels, but some of these assessments that are out there that companies interviews can be helpful in helping you understand more about yourself, not to label you, but to help give you insight into perhaps some of the strengths that you can lean into, and then areas that, you might benefit from.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. We've used those for sure, to help coach people. I mean, I even myself, there are things in me that um sometimes you don't recognize until it actually pops up, and then you have the opportunity to talk about it. And
Mhm,
I think for me, I did a 360,
mhm,
and it helped me to see how I was being experienced. And you think you're being helpful,
mhm,
but it actually is that, how people see that, view that. They're like, oh, well, you don't trust my decision making
mhm,
because you don't
mhm,
allow me to make them.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, and that can be difficult to receive as a
Exactly. Yeah,
as
for sure, for
a
sure. But when people hear it, because
Yes.
it's not until you hear it that you can actually do something
Mhm,
about it. So, one of the things that we've been doing inside our organization is, you know this well, have been reading the book Extreme Ownership, and one of the things that I've been thinking about with regard to extreme ownership, which, trying to get people to own outcomes and kind of think through things in a way of, how can I make a bigger impact in this situation? But we know that there's always, a pendulum swing to these things. And so, since we're talking about middle managers and we're talking about overtasking and people being out of balance and overburdening, I want to talk about kind of a way that leaders might misunderstand accountability. Like, what is their thing? You say, "Take what's yours and leave the rest."
yes.
How do you figure out,
What's yours?
"Alright, what's mine and what's not?"
Ah, that's like, what is the meaning of life? It's such a big question. Um, so in the context of work and business and leadership and middle, I always say start with yourself. Typically when you hear the word accountability, oftentimes people think it's about holding others accountable and for either what they've said they're going to do or what they are doing. I say accountability starts inward first. And as a leader, if you are in charge of a team, some of the questions you might ask yourself was I clear in communicating what needed to be happening? Right? Then as the leader, did I create the environment that allows the team to actually be successful? Did I remove obstacles? Did I provide resources? Was I accessible? What are the things that I did to create the environment that they could actually succeed?
Mhm.
And the third, did I communicate what the expectations were?
Yeah.
Something as simple as I've been, you know, we're all working remote, or a lot of us are working remotely now, and so you have a lot of Zoom meetings or video meetings. Something as simple as when we have team meetings, cameras on.
Oh, yeah.
That's an expectation. But if you've never said that to
Right,
anybody,
right.
and everybody's showing up and all the cameras are off, and then you get upset, and then you're upset with them, but you never communicated what your expectation was, right? So so clarity, providing the environment for them to succeed, communicating the expectations, then you can hold them accountable. But all of that happens after you've started with yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. I often tell my team, so, we try to do a lot and, with limited resources. And with my team, I'm often saying, "You're accountable for this, but you're not responsible for every element of it." And so it's like, making sure that you understand. I mean, this gets back to our delegation and making sure that you're providing clarity to your team and you know, and then providing the oversight. I think that's a great way to make sure that you don't get overtasked and over encumbered. And, so just one thing that I see all the time, like, that's a conversation that I have to have all the time, with my staff around those 2 words, because I think we conflate the 2 and think just because that
Quality and accountability?
yeah,
Yeah, I agree.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, so we use it, we overuse that word, but I don't know that we really understand
Mm.
what that means practically.
Mhm. And examples are always useful, I think.
Yeah,
So, in the conversation you're having, if you could provide that. I just wanted to say something about the clarity because I know I've used it a lot in this conversation saying, "Am I clear?" One way to test that is to ask the team to tell you what they've heard. So, I can be clear in my mind because I know what I'm thinking and what my intention is, but it's only clear if the receiving party hears it in the same way. So, for middle managers, if you're in this position, test that by just asking the team, "What did you hear? What's your understanding of what is being you're being asked to do?"
yeah. I think that is so important, and I have this conversation with myself all the time and even my senior leadership team, because a lot of times sometimes there's a understanding of what's been said, but I think the other thing is we are so zoomed in here, constantly have so much information coming at us that we miss stuff.
Mhm.
And, I always tell my team, sometimes you have to say the same things 4 and 5 different times before it actually sinks in, soaks in, to people. And so we just have to recognize what and how human nature is and make sure that we're building that into our systems and building that into our approaches of leading and communicating with our team and not getting frustrated at
Yeah.
to repeat. So
Yeah, there's statistics around this, Don, and what I found really interesting in the hospitality restaurant, industry, they've done studies on waiters who, when they take the order, if they repeat what the customer asked for directly, so you say, "I want a hamburger and fries, etcetera," and then the waiter says, "Okay, here's what I captured. You want a hamburger and fries?" It's like 95 it's like a really high percentage of those orders come back correct. If the waiter just writes it down and walks away and doesn't repeat it back, that's when you introduce this possibility, didn't get the right dressing, didn't get the right that. So that's why this test of making sure that what you say is what was heard
yeah.
and having them is so powerful.
It
Yeah,
it really is, and, the hardest thing that you're gonna do is lead people. It's
true.
people are the wild card, and they come with so many different varieties, right? I mean, every person, you can't one size fits all, management. You gotta deal with people kinda on a very individual, basis. So, all right, I wanted to just get back to the extreme ownership a little bit because I think when I think about it, or what I was thinking about some of the traps of the extreme ownership pendulum swinging way too far to the right, people can interpret that as having to carry everybody's weight, everybody's responsibility. And I just want to make the point that extreme ownership really is around owning your role in that outcome and expecting others and actually holding them responsible for carrying out the things that fall inside their sphere. So just wanted to kind of pull that thread and make sure we put a fine point on that, because ownership is important and for these managers, but it doesn't mean that you have to do it all. I have one little question here. If someone listening realizes that they have actually found themselves in the fixer role or the rescuer or hero role, what's the first thing that they should stop doing tomorrow? What's something that they might consider um, that they should modify in their leadership management approach?
Removing the word I.
Mm,
I have to do it all. I have to do it by myself. I have to solve everybody's problems. Removing the I out of it and replacing it with a we.
yeah, I love that because you're not in this alone.
Exactly.
You're leading the team, but it is a team.
I think one thing that I don't we touched on it, but I don't know that we use the word pressure.
Mm,
Because in middle management, being a middle manager, you are in the middle. I mean, by definition, and so it can feel like a pressure cooker.
yeah,
And um, what I would encourage if you're listening and feel like you're under pressure, you're not crazy. This it's a real thing. Pressure doesn't create character. I think pressure reveals it.
yes.
And so one of the things that or a few things that you can think about as you move forward in your career is, who do I want to be under pressure? What does that require? Couple things to think about. I think it requires courage because you're having to do things afraid. You're having to do things that you have to execute on other people's decisions, right? And sometimes that takes courage. I think it takes humility. Back to your question about what should I stop doing, et cetera. So taking the I out and being willing to ask for help, because a lot of times top producers can be challenged with asking for help. It's not a sign of weakness, actually. Asking for help is a sign of strength, including others um, in your journey is really critical. And then resilience, being willing to acknowledge that you're under, but you're going to get back up. To you will this too shall pass, as we say. So just be encouraged. You're doing you're doing an incredible service to the organization and to the executives and the leadership that you serve, and you're making an impact.
Mm, that was a drop the mic moment. I love that. Ola, I want to thank you. I think this has been an extremely powerful conversation. And one of the biggest takeaways that I have is that leadership isn't about carrying everybody's problems. You don't have to absorb the pressure, the word that you just used, all on your own. A lot of times managers think that they have to take that responsibility for everything that's happening around them. But that's not leadership, that's overload, and it leads straight to burnout. So great leaders don't become the buffers, the shock absorbers. What they're actually becoming is a bridge. They create clarity, they communicate reality, they set boundaries, and they build accountability within their team. I've mentioned before at FM Talent, we talk a lot about extreme ownership. And one of the most important distinctions from our conversation today is extreme ownership doesn't mean doing everything on your own. It doesn't mean owning all of the outcomes. It is definitely expecting others to own theirs and sharing that responsibility. So if you're listening today and you're feeling stuck in the middle, remember that you're not responsible for carrying the weight of the entire organization. Your role is to lead, to coach, to create clarity, and to build leaders around you. Because the strongest leaders don't carry the most weight, they build teams to carry it together. So, Ola, I'd like to give you the opportunity to share with the audience how they can engage with you or seek out your professional services, whether it's on the coaching side or the technology side.
Oh, well, I appreciate that, Dawn. So, as you started at the top, we connected through an organization called Vistage International, and it's an organization of leaders, really, who are all wanting to either grow personally and professionally and grow their organizations. And so that's the context in which I do my executive coaching work. And so I'm happy to, to explore possibilities. Not everyone is a good fit for the groups that I have just because of where they are in their professional journey, but we can certainly connect you with others who might be better positioned to support. And then on the technology side, I'm essentially a serial entrepreneur. I've been growing and building and selling companies for a while, and so that's my other passion. But I think the impact of the work I do in coaching is where I see the most direct results, because you're seeing the before and after. Definitely with companies, we're helping to solve problems, but with people, it's exponential, right? Because you're not just helping that person is help. It's like a ripple effect. So I just encourage you. I think it was some of the big CEOs around keep talking about everybody needs a coach. I agree. Get a coach.
Get a coach.
I have a coach. No, get a coach.
Yes, everybody needs a coach. You need
Yeah.
someone that can speak truth to your situations, and we all have blind spots.
And provide perspective. That's one thing that nobody can do for themselves. You can't give yourself perspective.
Yeah.
So that's really it's kind of like a coach in sports, right? The coaches don't often play the game better than the
Right.
player,
No.
but they offer perspective, right? They've mastered the game.
Yeah.
And so they offer perspective to the players about what they need to do to be on top of their game. So it's the same in business as well.
Well, we will make sure that we share your email address on the lower third. And if there's a web address that you want people to also visit for your Cyber RX, we'll make that available to folks as well. And for all of you all listening and watching today, I want to thank you for joining us for another episode of the FM Talent Blueprint. And until next time, let's keep learning, keep leading, and keep building leaders around you.